Order, please. We'll begin the daily routine presenting reading petitions. The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to present a petition with 84 names on it, and the operative clause is Therefore, be it resolved that we, the undersigned family members, councillors, and other concerned persons, call on the Ham government to show that it cares about the residents of Regional Residential Services Society by giving that agency a mandate and appropriate funding to negotiate wage parity for their residential councillors as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, and I have affixed my signature to the petition.
Petition is tabled. The honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition on behalf of 150 concerned residents living near Highway 101 in Digby County between the villages of Conway and Weymouth. The operative clause indicates this section of highway contains the school, post offices, several convenience stores, and churches, in addition to many residents. This road is extensively utilized by logging trucks, heavy equipment, large transport vehicles, and tourist traffic. Our lives are greatly affected by the tragic accidents on this stretch of highway, and we fear for the safety of our children as they wait for and travel on school buses. We live in danger on a daily basis. And Mr. Speaker, I have affixed my name to that petition.
Petition is tabled. Presenting the honourable member for Clare.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition bearing the signature of 83 family members, councillors, and other concerned persons who are concerned about the ongoing strike at Regional Residential Services. The operative clause reads, therefore be resolved that we, the undersigned family members, councillors, and other concerned persons, call on the Ham government to show that it cares about the residents of the Regional Residential Services Society by giving that agency a mandate and appropriate funding to negotiate wage parity for their residential councillors as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, I have affixed my name to that petition as well. Thank you.
Petition is tabled. Presenting reports of committees. Cabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, I beg leave to table the annual report for the Halifax-Dartmouth Bridge Commission for the year of 2002.
Report is tabled. Statements by ministers. Government notice of motion. Introduction. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I hereby give notice that I'll move the following resolution on a future day. Whereas sometimes seeing people in need brings the best out in the community, and whereas there are many wonderful people who volunteer or work for less than a market wage to assist those people in need, and whereas the Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank is one such caring community organization located in the HRM Intercity, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House recognize the excellent work done by the good people at the Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank, providing food, furniture, adult education, caring, and hope to those precious but more vulnerable members of our community. And Mr. Speaker, I would ask a waiver.
Waivers agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. Notice of motion. Orders of the day, government business, the Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, I move that you deny leave the chair and the House resolve the committee of the whole House on supply.
Motion is carried.
The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Mr. Chairman, would you please call the estimates of the Minister of Community Services?
Yes, the estimates of the Minister of Community Services. Are you up? Do we have any further interventions with the Department of Community Services? The Honourable the Member for Clare.
We're going to wait till
The Minister is present. We will begin. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could you indicate how much time's left? What time my hour will expire?
I will get that information to the member shortly.
Okay, great.
If you'd like to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, yesterday, as we left the Minister's assessment, we were talking about special needs. One individual at home that is currently living in public housing. receiving no disability pension, strictly living on income support from community services. This gentleman was receiving $384. Out of his $384 in total that he has to live on a month, this gentleman has to pay $204 for his rent and heat, which leaves him $180 for his personal allowance. And when we left off last night, I was indicating to the minister that this individual needed some dental work and was advised by his caseworker that he needed to pay some of the dental bill. And as this individual had indicated to me, trying to stretch his $180 to make ends meet, where is there any leftover money in order to help pay for my dental bill? Speaking about this individual, again, he had the choice to appeal the department's policy. This individual apparently tried to appeal the department's decision, but he indicated to me that it was for him and for those at the meeting, it was a completely waste of time. If these hearings are only to rubber stamp the department's policy and the caseworker's decision, then for this individual, he could not understand why it's the minister or the department, not being upfront with him and others and tell them before they go through this appeal process that they don't stand a chance with their appeal. So, Mr. Chairman, this is a very, very frustrating experience. And again, if the appeal process is simply to rubber stamp the department's decision, then there's really no need for individuals to go through that process. Mr. Chairman, I want to start off this morning looking at the supplement. Looking at page 4.9 in the supplement, Income Assistance and Employment Support Services, I want to focus a little bit about return to work initiatives. The department has some money budgeted for training. I know that the department tries to help individuals with training in order to try to get them back in the workforce and off social assistance. Again, I'm trying to understand what the department can offer in terms of options for training and what kind of assistance is available to help these individuals pursue some form of training. So maybe my first question to the minister this morning is, what options does the department offer to these individuals that are looking at doing some training or retraining?
Just before I recognize the minister, I would advise the member for Clare and the Liberal caucus that the member has until 9:50, 10 to 10, and approximately 41 minutes from the time we began this morning. The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, honourable member. Before I get to your question, there's two things that left over from yesterday. You touched on one, which was the dental, and appreciate your concern for your constituent. I guess that everybody would like to be able to do more, but with reference to the amount of support that is going into dental from the department, since we brought in the new Employment Support and Income Assistance Act, I know that just in a one-year period there was almost an increase by a third in the amount that went into dental, and I'm advised that even though we don't have the numbers for the years previous, that there was a substantial increase again when we brought in the new regulations on August the 1st of 2001. So while I acknowledge the member's point about 20% still being a difficulty, yet there is more money going for that purpose now under the new act and regulations. So, also, the member opposite was asking, in fact, about employment support services yesterday and the success that we've had in assisting clients to make that step to independence and working towards a career. And I had committed to bring him the numbers for the past number of years. And in fact, this goes back to 91, 92. And I would like to table, if I may, with the assistance of a page. I wonder, Mr. Chair, if we could have a page.
Could we have a page retrieve the document from the...
I would like to table this, and perhaps if you could also share that copy with the member from Clare.
Thank you.
Now, the member from Clare was asking basically about the employment support services aspect of community services, which is an exciting new development that came in on August the 1st of 2001. And he was asking just what sort of initiatives are in place that I feel have led directly to the reported drop of 9,000 people, or 9,000 cases, I should say, Mr. Chairman, from the Community Services Department. And of course, those people primarily, I would suggest, have gone on and have started careers and been empowered to now make a contribution to society and generally better their circumstances. With regards to that, first of all, I would point out that there's provision for adult education, and it's interesting that you asked that question because I just came back from the Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank this morning and was shown some of their work that they're doing with the community college in terms of adult education, and it's really wonderful because, as the member opposite would know, that we do have a significant adult literacy problem. Well, I'm going to say in the Western world, but we got to focus here on Nova Scotia, and community services clients, of course, also fall into that group. Some of them, and the work that's being done by either volunteers or people that have come to work for them for, shall we say, less than market wage because of the great satisfaction they derive from helping people, and this is just one example of the adult learning program. Of course, the member opposite would be aware that the community college system is an integral part of our education system, and we do support clients with a specific plan, Mr. Chair, to go back to the community college and acquire an education that lends itself directly to employment. We have a good working relationship with our HRDC in that. They will often step in and pay the tuition, although I would point out that in this case, the largest share of the bill is the ongoing support of the clients, but it is a good working relationship with HRDC, and it's wonderful to be able to provide those sorts of services to clients. In addition to that, some of the obstacles that previous to the introduction of the new act, such as the inability to get affordable child care, has been provided for with the $400 a month. Also, we provide a travel allowance. We also will assist with buying, whether it's work boots, gloves, all types of ways to empower the client to be able to take that step into employment. We extend their pharmacare coverage for a full year after they get off of community services, and sometimes that can be crucial because if you have the misfortune of having some sort of expensive medical condition such as diabetes that can run up to over $300 a month, sometimes you're not able to afford to leave community services because you're not able to afford to lose the pharmacare coverage. And this is a way of allowing people to gradually transition and hopefully get to an employer that has a group plan that would continue to cover for them. Also, Mr. Chair, I would advise the honourable member that the good people in employment support will often work with employers to tailor a plan for that special client that suits their needs in their business, and we will assist the employer in that regard until they're up and on their own and earning their own way. These are just some of the initiatives that I am aware of. Of course, the employment support counselors would be able to go into a lot more detail, but I hope that gives you some sense of some of the good things that is happening within the Department of Community Services.
The member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the Minister for his information. Just a couple questions on as a follow-up. I'm looking for information about the travel allowance. How does one, or I guess, how is the travel allowance decided? What's available? Because I know some of these individuals, community services does provide them with an allowance. Is that pretty well province-wide, same rates, applies to everyone? So maybe he could give me a little bit of information on the travel allowance that's being available to these clients. And my second question would be, as a follow-up, I understand that HRDC does assist individuals in getting back in the training, but at the same time, I'm quite sure in order to qualify for the HRDC assistance, you need to be on unemployment. But quite often, some of these individuals don't qualify for the HRDC training or the seats that's allocated to some of these individuals. So I guess my question would be, does Community Services provides any assistance with the tuition to allow these individuals to attend community colleges? Thank you.
The Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for his questions, and I would tell you, Mr. Chair, they are good questions. They show that he obviously cares and is concerned that the appropriate supports are out there to give community services clients every opportunity to make that transition. I would like to start by sharing some information that is a follow-up on the previous question that might be helpful with regards to his two current ones. I've got some numbers here which I would be prepared to photocopy and share with the two critics if that was your wish. Total number of clients participating in employment support services, 10,311, which is a very exciting number, because that means that 10,311 people have been given the hope that they're going to be able to make that transition, and all that that means to them and possibly their families if they have children. Of that, there are 1,401 that are involved with academic upgrading, 3,114 in skills training, and 2,550 in employment starts. So I'm sure the honourable member would welcome that news as I do, and it's certainly an indication of some of the reasons why we've had that very successful transition over the last number of years from community services to income assistance to work through the employment support program. And I also want to mention on that point that it does become more difficult as some of the more able clients move off. Those that are left behind may have greater barriers to getting back to work, and so therefore some of these other programs become more important to them as we try to give everybody that opportunity. You asked about the travel allowance. It's $150 per month. And that is something that would be worked out between the client and the caseworker, as the caseworker would work on their individual plan, or it could be the employment support worker specifically, and that would be through the cooperation of the client and the caseworker. You also were wondering about whether clients have to be on employment insurance in order to qualify the HRDC. There's a reach-back agreement that we have with HRDC so that people that previously were on EI and now are on community services can still access this. So again, I want to express my appreciation to the Government of Canada and the people at HRDC for working with us. It's really it's a good partnership with them, and we enjoy the participation. And I would also like to say to Minister Stewart how much I appreciated meeting her. I thought she's a very genuine, caring person. Recently in my trip to Toronto, and clearly we share many of the same goals.
The member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the Minister for providing us with that information. Could the Minister provide us with a contact in the department that we could maybe do a follow-up to get some information on this? Reach back, someone that was on EI the previous year that basically now is strictly on community benefits. So I'm just looking for more information on how individuals may qualify on this Reach Back program. So if he could indicate to us a contact within the department that we could do a follow-up with. Thank you.
The Community Services Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The contact person would be Sandy Spencer. Her name and telephone number and position is in the bottom of the sheet that I just gave to the page and asked a photocopy for the honourable member, a critic, in fact, from both opposition parties, and one to table for the committee.
The member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, going back to the supplement detailed book on page 4.9, we see there has been a reduction of almost $6.5 million in income assistance payments. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as the Minister indicated yesterday, the number of caseloads is dropping. The income assistance payments are declining. These income assistance rates are probably already inadequate to meet basic needs. I guess my first question would be, why is the department not reinvesting that saving of $6.5 million back into the system?
The Community Services Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the member opposite asks an appropriate question, and I hope that he would find that this is an appropriate answer. While the income assistance payments may have dropped some, and that's because people have been able to move off assistance and find work, the member opposite would note that employment support services, and return to work initiatives, employment and training, these are things that in fact are going up. So it's a better use of resources. I think it's better for the clients, and I think it's better for the province. So we are doing this. However, I think that if the member opposite is perhaps referring back to the struggle that some people still find living on income assistance, that I would make mention that as was discussed the other day with the NDP critic, we are doing a review of those rates. It has now been a year and a half since we brought in the new regulations, and we are reviewing them for adequacy, and specifically the shelter component is perhaps the one that was the catalyst for this, because as the member opposite would know, there are parts of the province where the rental market is getting tight, and when the rental market gets tight, rents tend to go up. And if you're have limited financial means, you're not always able to absorb those increases. That is not the only area that we're reviewing. Also, the basic personal allowance and everything is under review. But that may have been a little bit more of an answer than what the member was looking for, but perhaps I anticipated what the next question was going to be.
The member for Clare.
Mr. Chairman, this minister's good. That was my next follow-up. In terms of looking at the savings of $6.5 million, my question was, is the department looking at reinvesting that savings back into the system for training or for shelter component, or even trying to look at their personal needs? Mr. Chairman, I want to move on to housing because I don't have that much time. I want to go to the estimate book, page 4.9. Housing services, page 4.9 in the estimate book. I'm trying to understand how much money is being spent on housing this year. I see that the federal government has increased their funding. I see the federal government has increased their funding to $69 million. The municipalities are spending $5.8 million in housing. How much is being collected in rents? And how much is the province putting into the housing budget this year?
The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the honourable member for his question. That also was part of the reason why I was out this morning to Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank, because of, in fact, the very concern about affordable housing, and that the member is, I think, bringing up, and that, in fact, the member from the NDP was also making reference to yesterday. The member asked the amount of rents that come in to the Housing Corporation or through housing services. It's $48.1 million. The federal subsidies are $69.4. Now, some of that would be the money that would flow through from the agreement that was effective October the 1st of 1997. And what happened there is that the federal government wanted to get out of housing at the time, and it signed agreements with each of the provinces. And what took place there is they committed to honor all their existing agreements and to pay them out. And that goes to 2035. But what it means is that their ongoing contribution diminishes every year, and actually over the term of it, they end up saving something to the tune of about $1.3 billion. What has happened here is that it was a good decision to allow the provinces to administer the programs, because certain savings have come in, and indeed because of the interest savings, which is not something that's so much a function of good management, but the change in the cost of money. Significant surpluses have built up in the Housing Corporation, plus the province augmented that in 2001, 2002 with an additional, and I think it was $4.75 million. and an additional $5 million for 2002-2003. So there is a surplus called the Deferred Federal Contribution Account in the Nova Scotia Housing Development Corporation. And the federal monies flow from CMHC, Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation, to the Nova Scotia Housing Development Corporation, and then those that are required by housing services to fund the many programs that we support flow from the Housing Development Corporation. So there's a surplus there, and the 69.4 federal contribution would be in part those declining federal payments, not only to the province of Nova Scotia, but to all provinces and territories, in combination with the surplus that we have built up in that account through cost savings and additional appropriations in past budget years. The direct provincial subsidy is $7.4 million, but again, there's a surplus in the Housing Corporation which would augment that amount. And I think that probably answers the member's question.
The Liberal leader in the House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the minister explain municipalities make a contribution of $5.8 million to housing services? Two parts. First question: does all municipalities, do they help with the housing costs? And two, exactly what is this money being spent on?
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honourable member, for your question, a good question. I'm having to use a little deduction in order to answer your question. It would be, I would suggest, subject to the municipality having public housing, because what we fund is a percentage of the deficit after you take off the rents. There's a fairly significant operating deficit because it is to provide affordable housing. So basically we have a subsidized housing program, and the municipalities are responsible for 12.5% of that deficit that would accrue within their jurisdiction. And that's the deduction. I'm surmising that to be the case because I would think the municipality would not make a contribution if for whatever reason they had no public housing within their boundaries.
The member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the next budget line says less recoveries, other $4.3 million. Could the minister indicate what this budget line represents?
The Minister of Community Services.
Mortgages that we Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honourable member, we believe that the major component of that would be the mortgage interest on the mortgages that we provide lower income Nova Scotians. As long as the member brings it up, it's good to point out that under certain circumstances, the province will finance 100% of the cost of purchasing a home through housing services. Of course, that's not open to everybody. It's if you meet the qualifications, and the general mission of housing services is to provide affordable housing. So that's not for everybody, but for those special people that might not otherwise be able to get a mortgage.
The member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the minister for his response. I want to turn to public housing. I'm looking just for general information. If the if the minister would undertake to provide us with some information. I'm looking to find out how many public housing units do we have in the province, how many people are living in these units, and would the minister provide us with the breakdown per county?
The member for Clare. Pardon me, the Minister of Community Services.
There are 12,454 units. Those are broken down between seniors units, family units, and rent supplements, because that's another way we provide affordable housing. Sometimes if there's no unit available, we'll supplement the rent. In other words, we cover a portion of the rent so that the citizen is able to afford the apartment or the house. In terms of a breakdown by county, would the honourable member accept breakdown by housing authority? If that's agreeable, we can provide that, and we'll ask the page to make the appropriate photocopy. Would the member be asking more questions in that area before I give the page the sheet?
The Liberal leader in the House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We often hear there's some vacancies there, that not all public housing units are being occupied. Does the department have some indication how many vacancies we have across the province and exactly where they're located? So if the minister could provide us with some indication to that, please.
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The member is asking about the location of vacancies across the province. Vacancies are a natural part of turnover. We welcome turnover in a sense, because quite often turnover may mean that the tenant has perhaps improved their circumstances and ideally if moving on to home ownership, because we should never lose sight of the fact that in many cases the best possible situation is home ownership, and affordable housing tends to lend itself more to the rental market, where low-income families or seniors are able to get into units for a percentage of their gross income. And depending on the amount of the gross income, it could be 30%, it could be 25%. But in terms of the vacancies, as the apartments turn over, clearly the member would expect that the appropriate renovations are done so that the units would be ready for the next occupant, and depending on the condition of the unit is going to affect how quickly it can be turned over, and indeed the number of tenants that are moving in and out at any given point in time is going to affect the ability of the various housing authorities to turn them over quickly.
The leader in the House for the Liberal Party.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to understand if there is actually, significant number of public housing units that are emptied for any given time. And the reason I want to try to get that information, I also understand, Mr. Chairman, there's long waiting lists for different areas around the province. There's a shortage of public housing in other parts of the province. So would it be possible to get some information as well in order to have a better understanding to try to understand how significant this problem is in some areas around the province?
The Minister of Community Services.
I guess that I want a clarification, perhaps by a nod, whether the member opposite is asking about vacancies, which would be sort of like a snapshot in a point in time, or waiting lists for the various housing authorities. Okay, the member opposite would like both. We would endeavour to get the member that information. But as long as he brings that up, I made reference.
Order, please. I wonder if we could have a little more order in the chamber, please. It's getting quite noisy. Thank you. The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I made reference to the fact that the federal government made an announcement in, I think it was 93, that they wanted to move out of housing, and it was concluded with the transfer from Central Mortgage and Housing to the Nova Scotia Housing Development Corporation in 97. And there were substantial savings to the federal government by doing this. It is nice to see them coming back with the Affordable Housing Initiative now 10 years later, recognizing that there is a significant shortage of affordable housing across the country, and to take some of those savings that they're generated by their withdrawal from housing and providing it for the creation of new units through the Affordable Housing Initiative. And I was very pleased that my predecessor, the honourable member from Bedford Fall River, was one of the first provinces to sign that agreement. That will provide an additional $37.26 million for affordable housing, and the federal government in the last budget has added another $320 million to that, making it a $1 billion commitment. The details on that one are being worked out, but in fact I was in Winnipeg at a housing ministers meeting, federal, provincial, territorial, just last week, and we were talking about some of the details as to where they would be targeting those monies. So the member opposite basically recognizes that there's a shortage of affordable housing. I concur, and it's good that the federal and the provincial governments are moving ahead to try to address this as a team.
I'd like to recognize the Government House Leader and member for Hants West on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce to the House this morning 8 grade 12 students from Cape Breton Highlands Academy. They're down visiting us today with Mr. John McKinnon and Denise Murphy, and Minister MacDonald, the Minister of Tourism and Culture, would like to send you his greetings. Unfortunately, he is engaged in the other chamber with his estimates at the present time. So I'd ask the House to welcome these people from Cape Breton Academy.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to our guests in the gallery. Presently, we are doing the budget estimates for the Department of Community Services, and the leader in the House for the Liberal Party is placing questions to the Minister of Community Services. And as well in the Red Room, which you're certainly permitted to visit, the Minister of Tourism and Culture's estimates are going on as well. So welcome to all our guests in the gallery. The member for Clare.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, want to extend a warm welcome to our visitors up in the gallery. Mr. Chairman, I know my time's running short here, but I want to go back to the new 5-year affordable housing agreement that was signed back in September, $37.26 million over 5 years. At the time the agreement was announced, the minister indicated up to 1,500 housing units would be created or renovated. I guess my several questions. How much funding will go into building new housing units? We saw in November just passed that a 15 new unit will be built in Middleton. So I'm wondering how much funding will go into building new housing units? Is the funding going to be spent in specific areas around the province? And how much will be allocated for new housing units in rural Nova Scotia, or rural Nova Scotia will not qualify? And could the minister indicate how much funding under this 5-year agreement will each county receive? Thank you.
The Minister of Community Services.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest to the member opposite that was a question of some substance. And I would also suggest to the member that I look forward to giving him a full answer, and I understand that it's going to be coming forth from Housing Services in the form of a recommendation in the very near future. And I mean by the very near future, I understand that it could be a matter of weeks. something that I very much look forward to their recommendations, and I know the member opposite does likewise. You have asked how much money in this budget is going towards that program, provincial monies. There's an additional $1 million that is in the budget, plus the member would be aware that additional increments have been paid into the Nova Scotia Housing Development Corporation, and so there's monies there. The first opening, I understand, is tentatively scheduled for May the 31st, but that is just the tip of the iceberg because we look forward to many new units coming on in the meantime. The distribution of those units will be determined based on the recommendations that come from Housing Services, and I would also like to digress on that just a little bit, if you would allow me. One of the interesting things that I learned in my trip to Manitoba, in fact to Winnipeg, was that the federal contribution has to be matched by either provincial, municipal, or other organizations. It does not have to specifically come from the provincial government. And it was interesting that the city of Winnipeg just signed an agreement with the Manitoba government that provides for $17.5 million to put into affordable housing. And this morning I was out with Mayor Kelly in the inner city, and they're also very concerned about the state of homelessness and affordable housing in HRM. It tends to be a bit of a magnet for all of Atlantic Canada. Displaced youth tend to gravitate towards Halifax as opposed to some of the other cities in the area, compounding the problem. So we're not only trying to care for our own, but perhaps also for those of our neighbors. And they're all precious, and we should not in any way disregard that responsibility. But that is something that I would like to share here today, is that it does not have to exclusively come from the province, and I anticipate that will be reflected in the recommendations that come forward from Housing Services. And I'm not sure I answered all the members' questions, but I hope that I gave them some encouragement that good things are going to be coming forward over the next few years.
Order, please. That concludes the Liberal caucus's time at this time, and we'll shift to the NDP caucus. The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the Minister. Time, I must say, Mr. Minister, time goes by rather fast, and although we've been 4 hours into your budget, there's still a lot, because your department is the third most expenditure department within the province, and because of the number of varied programs and services that you provide to a multitude of agencies and organizations, simply requires a great deal of time to get that kind of information through the budget process. Mr. Chairman, now I want to go to the budget supplements, if I can, page 4.3. I should say the estimate supplements, page 4.3, and I'm looking at income assistance, child care, and I see a drop of about approximately some $800,000, I believe. I'm wondering if the minister can explain why there has been a drop in child care and income assistance.
The Minister of Community Services. He's moving.
Yeah. Okay. I thank the honourable member for his question. The funding for this can come through the early childhood development, and it can come from other sources, including the employment support and income assistance program. So it may not show in that budget line, but with reference to the $800,000, but you can also look to other parts of the estimates to find out where additional support is going for childcare through the various programs that we offer through the department.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Minister, I don't think that's a good enough answer. The reason I say that, Minister, is simply because income assistance and child care is one of the initiatives to move people to self-reliance and self-independence, and that in fact child care was a part of that program. So if in fact that program is going to be costed, Mr. Minister, then you would assume that that money would be designated in that particular budget because it's for a specific need. It's to address a specific need. I'm wondering if the minister can elaborate.
The Minister of Community Services on elaboration.
I'm just getting a few numbers to hopefully help answer the member's question. There's $4.9 million in income assistance that goes for childcare. 1.5 million of that comes from the Early Childhood Development Initiative. And I wonder if that perhaps better answers the member's question.
The Dartmouth North MLA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, it doesn't better answer my question because I'm trying to explain to the minister that there's a single entity here, and the single entity, Mr. Minister, is that we've decided that we would move people from welfare to work and make them self-reliant and independent. Along with that would come some funding set aside for child care because many of the individuals are single parents. One would have hoped that that would have been a line item itself and that would have identified specifically for that. And that's the reason why when I look at the income assistance child care, I would want to know why it dropped somehow $800,000. Now you're telling me there's a mix or blend. It's transferred through the other child care programs that are offered, and that it's not necessarily contained within the income assistance child care. Is that correct?
The Minister of Community Services.
The 1.5 that the member is referring to is just an allocation towards the 4.9, but I am advised that in the recent past that the allocation was only 900,000, and that it has in fact grown almost fivefold with the new Employment Support and Income Assistance Program.
Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, in his initial speak, the minister had indicated that there's some 325 new spaces, and I believe there's some 200 subsidized portable spaces. Now, the minister, I know, is aware that there's a long waiting list for subsidized daycare spaces. I'm wondering if the minister can inform the House just exactly what the situation is out there with respect to daycare spaces.
The Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for his question. There are 2,650 subsidized daycare spaces in the province, and as part of the initiative with the federal government, we will be adding more subsidized childcare spaces, and again this year there will be an increase in that number.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through the minister, I asked if the minister has has a list of the numbers out there who are waiting for subsidized daycare spaces. I'm wondering if that's available through his department, and if it is available through his department, if the minister can table it, and also if the minister has that information, what is his government doing about it? I know that in March that he had met with the minister, I believe in Ottawa, with respect to a comprehensive child care program. And I'm wondering if, in fact, he has impressed upon Ottawa that there needs to be additional monies to at least meet the demand of subsidized daycare spaces in Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I did meet with Minister Stewart recently in Toronto, along with the other provincial and territorial ministers. I would say that Minister Stewart is a wonderful advocate for children in the country, and I think that the Prime Minister will be remembered as well for his caring in that area. He may not be remembered well in all areas, but I think that's one area for which we have to give him some recognition. Minister Stewart was able to convince the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance to make a commitment for additional monies for early learning and child care. And indeed, the member opposite is quite correct. We look forward to those monies flowing into, amongst other things, more subsidized child care spaces. But it should be pointed out that this 5-year agreement is what I would say is it's heavily backloaded. And in fact, the amount of additional monies that are coming to Nova Scotia for this fiscal year, and I'm doing this by memory, but I think it's only $749,000 in this year. It goes to 2.3 next year, 2.3 million, and it rapidly escalates in the third and fourth and fifth years. But that is in addition to the early Childhood Development Initiative, which is now coming in at 15.1 million from the federal government.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And how much of the Early Childhood Initiative funding that comes through both from the federal government, Mr. Minister, and your department goes into salary enhancement, goes into the salary enhancement plan and the grant stabilization programs? Can you tell me how much money goes into each? Now,
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Okay. I would advise the honourable member, first of all, that I was off by $1,000 in terms of my answer last time. It is $748,000 in additional early learning and childhood and child care monies. With reference to his question about the stabilization grant, I'm not able to give him that answer here in terms of this fiscal year, but I can tell him that in the 2 previous fiscal years, an additional $7 million has been channeled into that area, and we will get him the information for 2003, 2004. Okay.
Member for Dartmouth North.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also asked the minister for the salary enhancement plan as well. You know, the minister, his predecessor, assured the daycare industry that in fact there would be salary enhancements, and there would be the opportunity to reach the level that they felt that was being requested by those people employed in that service. So I'm wondering if the minister can also tell me how much money has been put into the salary enhancement plan for this year, and if there is projected years for the salary enhancement plan as well.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Yes, I would like to clarify that the $7 million that's been put in is not only for stabilization, but that's also salary enhancement. And the problem here that the member opposite is alluding to is that it was difficult to keep qualified people in childcare. And so this program was brought forward in conjunction with the federal government to try to bring some stability to that sector. So the $7 million was stabilization and salary enhancement, because it's through salary enhancement and of course the investment in the childcare workers that it brings about some stability. So that's where the stabilization comes from. Salary enhancement is a means to stabilization.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to bring to the attention of the minister, and I'm sure the minister is aware of the Halifax Association for Community Living and the Halifax Development for Preschool. And the minister has had some letters with respect to their application for funding. Now, the Halifax Association for Community Development, Halifax Association for Community Living and Preschool Development, Mr. Minister, is an organization that assists individuals with disabilities, and they provide child care, a special child care service for those individuals with disabilities. They had made an application for funding, which has been denied, and I'm wondering if the minister can explain why that application for funding has been denied, when in fact some of those dollars were designated for persons with disabilities.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I would like to advise the member opposite that it's been, shall we say, an interesting process finding ways to fairly allocate these new monies that have flowed in through this agreement with the federal government. And it was not an easy process that was stewarded by my predecessor, the honourable member for Bedford Fall River, and the staff. And I would suggest that a lot of points were brought up by the sector as to what was the appropriate allocation, whether it should be a full-time daycare or a part-time daycare. There's just quite a considerable number of variables, all of which were legitimate, but in trying to make the allocation, you do not please everybody. But a program was put together after extensive negotiation, and the program is in place. As to a specific application, yes, periodically I get letters from people that perhaps have not understood what the parameters of the program are, and are disappointed by the answer. But if the member opposite has a specific child care provider and he would like more information, I would encourage him to perhaps approach me afterwards, and I will try to get that information for him. But in terms of children with special needs, there is a $750,000 ongoing annual allotment, and the idea here is, of course, to promote inclusion. It's really important that children get off to the proper start before they go to school, and that is part of the program, because, as the member opposite would be aware, those are the formative years, and the success of the child in school, and then with their career when they become an adult, it begins before they're old enough to go to primary. So it is a critical time in their life.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the minister is quite right. It's a critical time in a child's life, and it's and not only that, with children with disabilities, And I want the minister to know that I did send a letter off to Miss Virginia O'Connell, the Director of Child Care and Early Intervention Services, with respect to this very issue, simply because this very issue is near and dear to my heart, and because it's extremely difficult to find early child care spaces for persons with children with disabilities. And because that they provide some excellent services, and what they wanted the funding for, Mr. Minister, for example, was for the implementation of ramps, lifts, and the purchase of specialized equipment and playground renovations. And that was for these children with disabilities. And that's the concern that I had, and it was such a great concern that I decided to draft off a letter myself. And I'm just wondering, since the minister may not be able to deal with this on the floor of the legislature, if the minister could give some reconsideration to this application, have a serious look at it, and then come back to me through correspondence and to the Halifax Community Living and Halifax Development Preschool with some sort of an answer that can satisfy to me and to them why they were denied this particular grant.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I would be pleased to ask staff if they could provide me and through me to you and the applicant the assurances that the proper procedures were followed in dealing with their application. I'd be pleased to do that. I'm not able to guarantee the outcome of this, but my concern is that when we set up programs that we follow the guidelines and that everybody is dealt with in a fair and impartial manner. So I'd be pleased to follow up with the member privately afterwards.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to go to page 4.7 in the budget supplementary and talk about the transition and safe houses. There appears to be a drop in this budget again this year. The minister is very much aware that last year under his predecessor, that the transition houses budget line item and the Women's Centre Men's Treatment Program was cut by $897,000 last year. And after much public pressure, their funding was kept at approximately the same level at 2001-2002. They have been budgeted slightly less this year in the 2003-2004 budget, the 2002-2003 budget, and this year's budget is $4,662,100. This does not allow for staff wages increases, increase in heating oil, increase in insurance, etc. These organizations have no stability. Where are they to go for the additional dollars?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for his question. There are a lot of budget numbers here to look at. The commitment was to continue them at their 2001-2002 funding levels, which in fact we have done and exceeded by $24,200. I think the member opposite is making reference to the fact that the forecast for 2002-2003 is slightly less than the estimate for 2003-2004, and I would advise the member opposite that sometimes emergency situations come up and we may go in on a one-time basis, and that could account for that discrepancy. With reference to future funding, a commitment was made with the transition houses, the men's treatment centers, and the women's centers by the former minister. And one of the key points in this is that we would maintain the funding at the previous level, that being 2001-2002 level, while we worked forward on coming up with a plan that would provide service right across the province.
Member for Dartmouth North.
So When you say that you're going to look forward to a plan that will provide service right across the province, is there assurances that after this year, which happens to be an election year, is there assurances that the government will continue to fund transition homes and women's centers? And will they see the projected increase? Or is this just a stopgap for now while this might be an election year?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The commitment is there from last year, not this year, signed by my predecessor while he was still minister. I've forgotten the date of the letter, but I have read the letter, and it seemed to be lay the critical groundwork for moving ahead on this. The concern of the government, of the department, is that people, and particularly women and their families, that are in need of services will receive them regardless of where they live in the province. And we're not sure that there's that comparable service available everywhere. The number of transition houses are not clearly in every community, and of course we wish that there was no need for transition houses. We wish that people would not abuse their spouses and their children. So that would be the long-term goal, I'm sure, of everybody, to eliminate spousal abuse. But we are working towards some sort of provincial vision, and that's our goal. And I'm not sure if I've answered all the members' questions, but perhaps he could point out anything that I've missed in my answer.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if you are working towards some provincial vision, are you working with the directors of the transition homes and the directors of the women's centers across the province with respect to providing their input into this vision?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I thank the honourable member. There is a committee that's in place, and it's not only the women's centers and the transition homes, but it's also the men's treatment centers. And this is to try to assist men that have a problem, overcome it, so hopefully they can be, we'll just say, a better person. And there is a committee in place, and they're working on this, and I am expecting to hear back from them through the middle of this year.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do apologize for missing the men's treatments as well, but the most important thing here is that the government and the minister's department is in fact consulting, because your government's blue book had indicated that you would be consulting with people across the province when in fact there may be changes made by your government. So that's important to hear, and it's important to know. And I certainly hope that the input from those individuals who have provided that input will at least be recognized by the government. I also want to go to a report that I recently received called Social Assistance Reform in Nova Scotia. Is it working? And it was sponsored by the Antigonish Women's Resource Centre, Every Women's Centre in Sydney, and the Pictou County's Women's Centre. And it was released in January, and it identified a lack of information for women on assistance regarding programs and services to which they are entitled. Caseworkers often do not tell the clients about their rights to access special needs, etc. Many participants reported instances where they were denied a service and not informed of what they were entitled to because the caseworker had no knowledge of such a policy existing. And that was just part of their findings. As a result of their findings and working with these groups, there was some 11 recommendations in that report. I'm wondering if the minister has had the time to read the report, and if in fact he has acknowledged all or any of the recommendations.
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the member opposite for following up on that report and the 11 recommendations. I know that the department appreciated the report from the women's centers, and actually the member allows me to point something out that we are now doing in the department, which may not assist every applicant for community services, but it is an attempt to try to be more open and transparent. In fact, the regulations are on the website, and I understand that this is something that came in with the new Employment Support and Income Assistance Act. So we are trying to empower our clients or any potential clients to be able to get that information. And again, I recognize that that may not be helpful to all of them because they may not have access to the internet, or they may not know how to use the internet, or there may be other obstacles that prevent them from making use of it. But I would suggest that the member opposite would welcome that initiative, that we are trying to be open and transparent and make that information available. Sometimes if you have a concern in a specific area, being able to research it assists your own case, and I know the member opposite often helps out his constituents when it comes to appeals, and I suspect that he is familiar with that website.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the unfortunate part of it is that I may, or my office may be familiar with that website, and we may use it frequently. The unfortunate part of it is that many of the citizens who are on income assistance and many of the people who need social assistance in this province, many of those individuals do not have computers. As the minister had indicated earlier, there's some 9,000 people who in fact moved off of income assistance hopefully into self-reliance and into meaningful jobs. And the minister and his department would be very much aware of those that I'll bet you every one of them did not have a computer system within their residence or own a computer. So I do know that I did some years ago, and I believe that was a recommendation out of this report as well. Some years ago in budget estimates, I asked the then Minister of Community Services to provide brochures to clients indicating their entitlements, what they were entitled to, the programs and services that were available to them, and in fact that this would go a long way. I guess when I go through this report again, I want to say that this same report identifies some wide discrepancies in caseworkers' policy, interpretation, and implementation. Often women are put in vulnerable positions to do subjectivity or interpretation of policy, and that's simply by the women themselves. And if the women's centers weren't there, and if in fact their MLA's office weren't there, many of these individuals would be left alone, not knowing what to do or how to access, or how to even understand the policy that may be available to them. So the minister, again, you didn't tell me if in fact you read the 11 recommendations or read the report, and if in fact you have endorsed any or all of the recommendations yet, or if you're still reviewing it on file. I guess my question is are you doing that, and has your department considered making it easier for individuals on social assistance to understand the department and its policies?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the honourable member for his two questions. To the first one, I was briefed immediately after they delivered their report, and it is within the department, and normally when these things happen, it's taken under consideration, it's given study. As we discussed yesterday, there is a review going on in the department of the new program. With the release of the new program and the regulations, there was some information that was made available. The member opposite was talking about brochures. But unfortunately, the complexity of the regulations do not lend themselves well to a brochure. That's why the internet is a better vehicle, and we can constantly update the internet so that it can always be current. The member opposite is quite right. There are other organizations, including the local MLA's office, that should be able to breach that gap when a constituent is having difficulty understanding the regulations and perhaps their eligibility for assistance or various programs. I would also point out that through the CAPSITE program, the internet is available again for those that are able to access the internet, and that is not everybody. But yes, the MLA's office is another area where people can go for assistance, and I know the member opposite has provided those services, and I know that all members of this House would be providing those kinds of services to their constituents.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly hope the minister gives some serious consideration to the report, Social Assistance in Nova Scotia. Is it working for women? And I know the minister's department will. I don't know if the minister has responded back to those participants, such as the Antigonish Women's Centre, the Everett Women's Centre, and the Pictou County's Women's Centre as of yet. He may not have responded back to them with respect to their report. I certainly know the minister will, or his department will respond back, and I certainly hope out of the 11 recommendations there are some which I'm not prepared to point out here today, but I do know there are some very good recommendations in there, and I think that it will go a long way in assisting the department in providing clients on social assistance with access to social services programs, and programs in which are essential and needed by those clients. I want to go to the area of persons with disabilities, and I do know that the minister receives a report from LEO, the League of Equal Opportunities, on an annual basis. I believe that they give you an annual report, and there has been a recommendation by LEO, as well as a recommendation by LEO with respect to a technical aids program. Now, I have asked the previous minister to introduce such a pilot project on technical aids, because as the minister is very much aware, technical aids are very important to those individuals. Many times individuals are left in hospitals simply because the technical aids are not available to them. They're at home simply, and they cannot move out of their home environment because the technical aids may or may not be available to them. And so what happens is that they're restricted with respect to their mobility. And a technical aids program would be an exceptionally good program and administered, I would say as well, by individuals with disabilities, because they best know how to deliver that sort of a program or project. And I'm wondering if the minister has given any serious consideration to a pilot project with respect to technical aids in Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, I thank the member for asking the question. And it's interesting that you asked that question, because prior to receiving that information from LEO, League for Equal Opportunities, I met with our Executive Director in the Disabled Persons Commission, and apart from discussing with her the name of the Disabled Persons Commission and wondering whether perhaps it should be the Commission for People with Disabilities, because I think we should focus on the abilities and not the disabilities. We in fact had this conversation, and it always pleases me when my staff are ahead of me. And we did talk about various ways of facilitating the sharing of these devices that are so critical to the life of people that have to live with disabilities, whether it's a wheelchair or braces or whatever device that they need in order to live, work, play, and generally have a full and productive life. So to answer the member's question, this is something that we are looking at within the Disabled Persons Commission. Judy Hughes, who you would recognize as the executive director, is very interested in this, and so am I. And we hope that with the assistance of the folks from Leo, that perhaps we can do something with this.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not my hope that you can do something, Mr. Minister, with this. I believe that it should become a reality. Now, I've been in this House for approximately 5 years, and each year that I have brought this to the Department of Community Services through budget estimates and through question period. It seems as though it takes a very long time for government to move on what seems to be a very important issue. And I do know, Minister, that you are compassionate, you're caring, and your department is compassionate and caring, and certainly wouldn't want to see these individuals immobile, and in fact would encourage the mobility to be sped up, and so that these individuals could go out and be full participants in the community, and that they would not have to stay in hospital as a result of not having technical aid services provided to them. You know, Mr. Minister, the single most expensive item to some of those individuals are, in fact, braces, wheelchairs, might be special oxygen tanks that they need to take around, a whole host of issues. And for us to continuously talk about what we're going to do, and that sometime down the road or somewhere in the future we see this happening, is simply not good enough. If you're a disabled person, you know how important that is to you. You know how important it is to be mobile. You know how important it is to be a part of the community, and how restricted you are when you don't have the services provided to you to be a part of the community. So my question to the minister is, once again, if you stand here and tell me you are looking at it, do you have a date in mind? And what kind of a service will you provide? Will it be a pilot project to start with? Will it be run and operated by persons with disabilities? What kind of a department or project are we looking at?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the member opposite for his question, and I thank him for his passion to assist those that are less able in society. I would start by saying that before he started asking a supplementary question on this, I had asked if we could get a follow-up with the director from the Disabled Persons Commission on where we are in that proposal. The specific details of what would be in there will be contained in her recommendations, and where she is the spokesperson for various disabled organizations, and that, in fact, disabled people in the province, or more aptly, people with disabilities in the province. I'm sure that the points the member opposite brought out will likely be reflected in her recommendations. At least I would hope so, and I'll be looking for them. I did want to speak on the availability of some devices to assist people with disabilities that are currently available through either employment support or income assistance, and also the employability assistance for persons with disability program, which Minister Stewart has extended by exchange of letters with the various provincial and territorial ministers, which actually flowed out of our meeting in Toronto. This is a case where the federal and provincial governments cost share 50-50 the cost of providing these devices to assist people with disabilities to be able to pursue gainful employment. And sometimes if it's the need for a wheelchair or some other device which otherwise would be prohibitively expensive, it may well be available through this program. And there are certain circumstances under special needs with the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program that may also address those areas. But the member opposite, I'm sure, would agree that that is not necessarily where we want the main focus to be, because those people with disabilities also have a right to be full members of society, and in order for them to do that, they do need this extra assistance.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to tell the minister that I have tremendous respect for the previous executive director of the Nova Scotia Disabled Persons Commission, as well as I have tremendous respect for the present executive director, Judy Hughes. Judy Hughes and Charlie McDonald and I have met on a number of occasions and spoke about these very important issues that go forward. My concern is that there are many recommendations put forward by the Disabled Persons Commission of Nova Scotia, as well as recommendations put forward by Leo and a number of other disabled organizations throughout the province. Many of those recommendations have to deal with transportation of disabled persons, some of that transportation being used by seniors, some of them, and often disabled persons are not able to access it because it's available to someone else. And this is particularly in rural communities that the transportation services provide a myriad of services to individuals such as seniors, disabled persons, and the like. And so there really isn't a comprehensive transportation system, or service, I should say, not system, but service set out for individuals with disabilities across the province. Another big issue with them as well is with building code standards and so on. Does your department look at the issue with respect to building code standards, the building of subdivisions, the building of not only of public buildings, but of private buildings as well, where people must access? Does your department do an ongoing review and assessment of how provincial municipalities' building inspectors and bylaws are affecting persons with disabilities mobility? And that in itself is very important. There's a myriad of recommendations that come to your government and your department, Minister, with respect to from the Disabled Persons Commission, as I've said, along with Leo and others. And I'm wondering if you keep a report card yourself, Minister. Maybe the Commission doesn't, or maybe the agencies don't, but do you keep a report card yourself on how many of those recommendations have been adopted by your government?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Member made reference to the building code specifically, and I'm pleased that he brought that up because in my former role as Minister of Environment and Labour, I was on that committee of ministers that meets with the Disabled Persons Commission, and one of the things that came up at that time was in fact the building code, and also concerns about making sure the appropriate protections are there for say people that may be confined to a wheelchair in the event of fire, and then we get into the fire marshal. In fact, this was discussed with the Disabled Persons Commission, and a lot of good ideas and initiatives flowed out from that meeting. To say that I'm aware of just exactly which ones have been undertaken, I would defer to Judy Hughes and look to her to advise me where we are in terms of a scorecard on that one. But I concur with the member opposite that she is a wonderful presence as executive director, and I think the member opposite would be aware that Charlie McDonald has taken another position within the Department of Community Services, and so he contributes to in a new capacity, and we're very fortunate to have him.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, I want to go to housing now, and to the minister responsible for housing, which is the Minister of Community Services. And I want to note that in 1995-96, I believe, there was a federal-provincial agreement to see the province take over social housing. The federal money was given to the province. I'm wondering if you can tell if you can table to the department's documents and the housing outlining where all that money went each year. Mr. Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Honourable Member. What I would like to do is I'd like to get you a list of the ongoing federal commitments, and it shows how they decline eventually to zero in 2035. What happened on, I think it's October the 1st of 1997, when Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation passed over the responsibility for the housing stock to the Nova Scotia Housing Development Corporation, is that they committed to live up to all their existing agreements. But implicit in that statement is the fact that there was no anticipated new agreements, which would mean that the federal government eventually was extricating itself from public housing. Again, this is from memory because I do not have that briefing note in front of me, but over that period of time, without the new affordable housing initiative that has now come forward from the federal government, and I'm pleased that they are getting back into public housing with the provinces and territories, but the net loss to Nova Scotia was something in the tune of about $1.3 billion over that period of time. And I would like to provide that stream of commitments from the federal government to the honourable member until it expires in 2035, and I've asked staff if they could please locate that table.
The member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's not necessary. I'm not necessarily interested in the table. I know that when the federal government got out of the housing business in 1997, that through CMHC, that they sent down a bag of money to the province of Nova Scotia to maintain the existing housing stock in which the province was, which the federal government would have been responsible for. And what I want to know is if the department can table documents outlining how that money was spent from 1997 onward to the year 2003.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for his question and that further clarification, and I would advise that there was a small additional amount that recognized that some of the loans were in trouble, and so provision was made in that sense, basically in anticipation of bad debts, so that the transfer would be a fair one. But over and above that, as it has been explained to me, the ongoing federal monies are the commitments that they had made in signed agreements, the last of which expires in 2035, and when that one's gone, and that's just the last one, because there's many that are already beginning to expire, and so what we have is a gradual withdrawal of the federal government from public housing until, to their credit, they step back in with the Affordable Housing Initiative, which has now been increased to $1 billion across the country, and I think it was the right decision on the part of the federal government, and we as a province have signed on and committed to either match those funds provincially or see that there are matching funds so that we can go ahead with the initiative. But as long as we're on that subject, and the honourable member from Clare also brought this up earlier, and I think it might bear pointing out that the federal government's concern was to add additional units. There was an interest on the part of the provinces, and particularly the Atlantic provinces, to address some of the major renovations that we feel need to be made to the public housing stock, and we felt that as a result of a ministers' meeting with the former minister Gagliano, that could be accommodated in the bilateral agreements, and in actual fact that was not followed up upon by Central Mortgage and Housing, so it's left us in a situation where the money pretty much has to go into new housing units. It might have been better if we could have split it between making major renovations to the existing ones, perhaps putting in things like elevators and wheelchair ramps and other things to make them more accessible.
Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll come back to the housing component of the minister's portfolio later. Right now, I'll pass my time on to the honourable member for Hants East.
The member for Hants East.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank my colleague, the honourable member from Dartmouth North, and I want to thank the minister and his staff for allowing some time. First thing I want to get to, Mr. Minister, is the issue around Rick Osborne. I wonder if the minister can tell me why it is that he has not been allowed to go back to Link House. He was slated to go back on Wednesday past, and on Tuesday, your department said they wanted to reassess him. So I'd like some explanation as to why he's been stalled again from going back there.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the gentleman is a constituent of the member, and as such, if the member wishes to get a more detailed explanation, he would know that the floor of the House is not the place. You asked me a question in question period yesterday, and as best I could, I tried to give him some indication of what was going on without betraying the confidentiality which I'm bound to uphold as minister. I would say that our primary concern is the health and safety of the people in the minister's care, and that when somebody has a serious medical condition which affects their health in a dramatic sense, and possibly deteriorating quickly, that we would want to make sure that when living up to any decisions by an appeal board, that we did so in a manner that never forgets the health and safety of the person in care. But if you're looking for me to get specific with regards to a particular person in care, I would invite the member to speak with me privately afterwards, and I will do all I can to assist him. But I will not be speaking about a case here on the floor of the legislature.
The member for Hants East.
Well, the rules in the chamber apply to the Red Room, and they have no problem talking specifics in the Red Room. So I don't know why it's a problem here, Mr. Minister, and I'm going to talk specifics if you can't. Now, this individual suffers from ALS. Not only is he a constituent or a former constituent, because now he's moved to Truro, but he's also my second cousin. And the family has no problem with me raising this on the floor of the House or anywhere else. Matter of fact, they're asking me to do that. So, what I want to tell the minister is that the family went through hoops put in place by your department. Your department asked them or advised them to appeal their decision, and said that your department said they'd support the appeal decision. Now, here's the decision. And what the arguments put forth by the appellant argued that just because he had a G-tube inserted, he should not be considered requiring more care than a group home is licensed to provide. What the arguments put forth by the department, which is your department, the department argued that as a result of the appellant having a G-tube inserted, he no longer met the classification criteria for placement in a group home. Now, the decision, the board grants Mr. Osborne's appealing, finding that after the insertion of the G-tube, he should correctly have continued to have been classified for continual placement in a group home. Group homes are licensed to provide the care that Mr. Osborne required before the insertion of the G-tube and continues to require after its insertion. The function and care of a G-tube does not require nursing services. Now, I was told this morning that your department had told the care provider that they had to have 24-hour LPN care for him. That's not necessary according to this appeal decision, Your department said they would support the appeal decision, and I want to know why they're not supporting it, because this was a requirement that they put back in place in January, and the appeal occurred after that. So I want an explanation as to why your department is stonewalling and keeping him from going back to a place that he considers to be his home. Because the appeal says he doesn't need that level of care. So I want to know who your specialist is that says that he does need it, because there's a list I can give you of physicians who say he can be cared for well under present circumstances there.
The Honorable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the member opposite can make specific reference if he chooses to a constituent or former constituent or a relative in asking questions here on the floor, but I would advise the honourable member again that I'm not able to discuss specific cases. I have already given the member the assurance that we are endeavouring to honour any decisions that are made as a result of an appeal, and that is the policy of the department, and we will continue to do so. But if you try to engage me in discussing the specifics of an individual in the care of the minister, I'm not going to do it here on the floor of the House.
The member for Hants East.
Here, here. Well, if the honourable members would take the time to check Hansard on previous budget estimates debates, they'll find they're full of specific references to constituency issues and constituents. We've been doing this, I've been doing this for 5 years. This is not new on the floor of this House.
Order, please. The member for Hants East has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe I can echo the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources that what this minister is doing doesn't make it right either. Mr. Minister, you haven't even give an explanation in general terms. If you don't want to use the specifics, then give me an explanation in general terms of why your department is overturning an appeal board ruling. Give me an explanation of that. Why you're overturning an appeal board ruling for anybody who goes to appeal. Why are you doing that?
The member for the Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Mr. Chair, I believe the member opposite is a compassionate person. The behavior that he's exhibiting here today is out of character for him. I think the honourable member has dealt with me before on other occasions, and that if he truly wanted to assist this person, that he would do with it, he would deal with me privately, and I would do all that I could to assist him, but I will not discuss it on the floor of the House.
The member for Hants East.
Maybe the minister would remember our private discussion before we went into the presentation for the Black Business Initiative a month or so ago. And the minister promised me that day that he would take petitions to the Premier that had been gathered in support of this individual. I want to know if the minister took those petitions to the Premier.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
I do remember the discussion, and the honourable member would recognize, I think, that I was well apprised of that case, share some of his concerns. I remember giving the Premier petitions, and I'm assuming that you gave me the petitions that day, or they came through to me. I remember giving the Premier petitions for something, and I believe that they were the petitions from the people that were expressing concerns in this matter.
The member for Hants East.
The petitions were left with your staff at the last meeting that I attended with them and the family. The day that I spoke to you, you hadn't received them at that point, and that was probably 10 days or so after that meeting, so I was a little disappointed that your staff hadn't delivered them to you by that time. I would like to know, because that day that you and I spoke in private, you assured me that the appeal process would go through and that your department would honor it, and I'm not finding that today, so maybe you can tell me if you want to encourage me to speak to you privately, I'd like you to assure me that what you tell me in private is something you'll back up, because you're not doing that today.
Honorable Minister of Community Services.
I would just make reference to the fact that when I say something, I follow through on it. Thank you.
The member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that I would like to speak to the minister in private on this, and I would like his assurance that he'll follow through.
The Honorable Minister of Community Services.
I would welcome that opportunity.
The member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to move to group homes in my area, Lance Group Home in particular. The group homes there have not had a change in budget, or actually they haven't had a budget approved since 93-94. They have run overdrafts at the bank. Sometimes they have a shortfall of $50,000 a year. The department has come forward and cleaned off the debt for them.
Order, please. Members' time for debate has expired.
Thank you. Thank you for the heads up.
I kind of actually gave you a little extra time there, so. The chair will now recognize the member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to continue where I left off with a few more questions on housing. I want to go back to the existing social housing programs, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, as you're aware, and probably everyone in this House, constituents are always looking for information on housing programs. We know that there's many low-income families, many seniors that need funding with repairs or adaptations to help them stay in their own homes. The department has a number of housing programs available to help these individuals. My first question would be to the minister to find out how much funding is given out in the department's budget to each 4 regional housing office for home repair assistance.
Honorable Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member. I do not have the breakdown by region, but I do have the program budget. I can give you the breakdown on that. I can talk a little bit about the future, some of the negotiations that went on last week in Winnipeg, and the assurance that I feel I got from the federal minister and the new Secretary of State responsible for CMHC. With regards to the size of the program budget, it continues at $8.7 million. It's a 75-25 federal-provincial plan. That being the federal subsidy would be $6.9 million, and the provincial subsidy is $1.8. As a result of the program review that was done in conjunction with the provinces and the territories, and I would advise the House and that Nova Scotia was a participant in that, and the former minister actually was definitely a champion of continuing that RAP program, and we are very pleased that Minister Collinette was able to convince his federal colleagues to continue it. The continuation is for 3 years, and there was no increase in the amount, and when it actually came down, I would say I had concerns because applying the 3% to the total amount, it looked like there might be a cut in the Nova Scotia allocation. And in fact, with some of the federal briefing material that was contained in my package for last week, there was mention of per capita, which is not good news because the member opposite would know how difficult that's been for the Atlantic provinces as it pertains to healthcare in particular. And I feel that we do have it on the record from the minister, and I do appreciate the support that I got from my provincial and territorial colleagues to continue to focus that on need. So I take it from that we can expect the same allocation in the next 3 years as we've received in the past, but it is an area where there's sorely need of more attention. Last year we were able to assist about 1,000 homeowners